it's not that you can't take risks, but like understand what it is that you're good at and then go to market for it.
I am unwilling to give up. That I will start over from scratch as many times as it takes to get where I want to be.
You just want to make sure you will get knocked down, but just make sure you don't get knocked out.
So your only choice should be go focus on what you can control.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Kara Golden Show. Join me each week for inspiring conversations with some of the world's greatest leaders. We'll talk with founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and really some of the most interesting people of our time. Can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hi, everyone. It's Kara Golden from The Kara Golden Show, and I am so excited to have my next guest, Jayma Cardoso. She is an entrepreneur and founder and CEO of the Surf Lodge out in Montauk. You may have met her, although she's so modest that I think you might see her around there, but you wouldn't even know she is the person that she is. And they've expanded, of course, into Aspen, which I will let her talk to everybody and share a little bit more details about that. But just so you have a little bit more info on Jayma as well. She's a fixture in the hospitality industry, lives part-time in Tribeca as well. And she founded the Surf Lodge in 2007. And it's just this iconic destination that has not only a hotel, but a restaurant. And it is the Hamptons place to be. And where exclusive guests and star-studded weekend performances. And one of our investors, John Legend, has even played there. And so amazing. And as I mentioned, last year, she created a pop-up location in Aspen called the Snow Lodge, which I was also lucky enough to be able to go and visit and had an amazing lunch there. It was so much fun. And so I'm very, very excited to have you, Jayma. So thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I am blushing, although you can't see.
You are just so sweet and so modest. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and hear just a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I travel to New York City for school and started in New Jersey at Rutgers. And when I moved to New York City, was a lot more expensive. And so that's how my hospitality sort of journey started. My roommate in school at the time said, hey, I have a friend named Rocco who owns a restaurant in Soho named Boom. And I can make the intro, And I said, okay, well, Katya was her name. And I said, Katya, do you know what positions are the ones that make really good money? Because I'm struggling, right? And I need to balance school and
yeah.
And so she said, I heard bartending is the way to go. So I said, okay, great, Katya, set me up. And so the next day I had an interview with Rocco and I said to him, hey, Rocco, I'm looking for a bartending position. And he said, you have experience? I said, yes, yeah, really
I've
good.
made drinks before.
I made drinks. I had a couple of drinks before myself.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, fast forward, he put me on a training session the next day, which I came in and, he said, oh, you're going to do service bar, like that's how we train our bartenders. And I thought, oh, my God, no, how am I going to manage? And by the way, this is my journey. Do not try it. And I'm not saying to start it this way.
I love this.
And so anyway, Rocco and his entire staff realized really fast I wasn't the best bartender. But I think that Rocco saw in me that there was, despite maybe my skills not being the best, that the guests loved it, right? And that I was super hospitable. And he said to me, look, I don't think that you can be a bartender here, but I think if you want, we can give you a hostess position. And so
So you became the hostess.
I became the hostess. Eventually, I did learn how to bartend. and sort of, that's kind of where, how I got my hospitality sort of started.
I love it. I was one of the things, I just launched a book a couple of months ago, and one of the things that so many people have come back to and shared how much they love this chapter. I talk about my waitressing days. So I grew up in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and I worked in this still amazing Mexican restaurant. It's I feel bad calling it this, but it's this great dumpy Mexican restaurant that's over 100 years old, and it's called Teepee. And I learned so much there, but I also met so many people. And that's ultimately why I ended up launching into how I got to New York, just by meeting people and talking to people. And I've always really enjoyed people. I think you're very much like this, but totally. That's how I ended up, just through hearing stories. And I, wasn't a kid that I went to Southern California a lot, but that was kind of it. We didn't travel as a family very much. And so I would meet people and I'd hear they were from Chicago, and I'd want to know, what's it like? If I go there, where should I go? And I was just curious.
Make all these notes.
I would. And I would make all these notes. And then finally, when I was deciding to go and, graduate from college, I would go back to those. And then I couldn't decide. And because there were so many great options out there. And so I bought a plane ticket and went all over the US for a month. And I, kept,
awesome.
Yeah. And it was, and I still, when I speak on college campuses, I tell that story that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do something that I loved. And so I just kept telling people, and asking people, because I do believe that, especially people who are maybe twice your age, when you're in college, you start sharing that you're ambitious, you want to do what you love, they'll help you, right? I mean,
totally.
They'll introduce you to people. And I'm sure you've been introduced to people too that might want to get into hospitality or whatever, 100%. And you need help. As long as you're willing to start at the bottom and, and work hard. And I think that that's really the key thing. So, but I love, so you're working there, you're in the hospitality industry, doing your thing as a hostess. And what happened then?
And so he was opening up a place in the Hamptons. I ended up going there, ended up eventually learning, how to waitress, how to bartend and all of the different, and just fell in love. I mean, it was like I feel good around people, and maybe it's the sort of the Brazilian in me of always trying to take care of people like a mom. And so I just felt at home, and while I was in school, I was like, look, this is something that potentially I can see myself growing into. And then eventually I opened up my first restaurant, my bar, another bar. And then eventually I came across a real estate broker, and I said to him, hi, Stephen, I'd like to do a hotel now. I'm getting older. I already have had a couple bars and restaurants. And he said, Jayma, impossible. New York City, impossible. And I said, what do you mean? Because, and I mean, at the time we opened actually Surf Lodge 2008. And so at the time was sort of booming the market, right? And in the city itself. And I said to him, okay, fine, maybe not in the city right away, but what about the Hamptons? I always go to Montauk. I come across all these little cute motels that I feel like if you paint them white, we can charge a lot more than the $99 they're getting right now. And he said to me, okay, let me think about it. If I come across something sort of like this, and soon enough, not soon enough, but maybe 6 months later, he said, hey, I think I have something for you. And I'll never forget, it was maybe 7 weeks to Memorial Day weekend. And, that's Surf Lodge. And I'm thinking, okay, how can we obviously have to open Memorial Day weekend. We don't want to miss the season. And that was like the craziest timeline, I think, anyone has ever had to take like a little sort of beaten up motel, and transform.
And what was that actually? Was it a little beaten up motel or?
So it was partially, the rooms were mostly staff housing. And then the restaurant and bar was kind of like a local divey sort of bar. But the rooms were like, I remember it was a tough timeline to get it all done, but we did it.
That's crazy. Did you feel, especially since it was your first hotel, right? And were you afraid?
I don't know if it wasn't afraid. It's just, I've always been this person that no task is big enough, right? Like we can figure it out. And so I think it was more like excitement. I had a great team of partners, Rob McKinley, who designed the hotel and, made it so beautiful. So it was more like the timeline. We have guests also raising the money, right? Like forget about all this the fluffiness and the beautiful part of the business, but also we had 7 weeks to find investors, raise the money, convince the landlord to give us a note, and all of the fun stuff that comes with getting.
And this was your first time doing that.
That was the first time raising that type of money into a hotel, because I had raised money before for
the restaurant,
a restaurant and a bar. But it's also I had like done pop-ups in Southampton, and I think, or even done events in East Hampton. But when I remember sitting with investors, and going through the slides on the deck and saying, "Oh, so this is the project," they would be like all excited, and the location is in Montauk, and I could see they were like dying to run out of the office. Like, you're wasting my time. Nobody's going to drive the additional hour and a half. And I'm like, no, we're building this for Montauk. There's this great community of like artists, and there's great people there. And then of course the people from Southampton, if they want to come, it's still, and I could see they were like, oh my God, I just got, another call. I have to go.
Well, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the Hamptons, it's like when Jayma came out there, I mean, Montauk was really, it seemed far. Right? It was really, kind of the furthest you went was East Hampton, right?
Totally, 100%.
And then you go into Amagansett, but even Amagansett was like on the outskirts.
Like, yeah, totally.
It wasn't as, right? And so but you were really, Surf Lodge was the draw because you really did understand not only how important great food is, but also entertainment. So how did you, obviously you had run a bar, you knew this other industry, and it really is, they're not the same industries. They really are different. They may seem the same. But so what were kind of the first things that you thought about in addition to raising the capital? But
yeah, and once we sort of accomplish all of that, I think the idea was, how do we build a project that is true to Montauk, right? And Montauk is, besides being this amazing sort of a fisherman village, it was very much about music and art, right? And so from day one, we're like, what type of music would be true to this community? Because we didn't want to come out as this New York City people now trying to make Montauk glitzy or city people, or, and so it was super important for me, especially, and my partners at the time, how do we make this the type of music, the type of food, the type of vibe that is so true to the community, so that the fishermen can come in on a Sunday and listen to reggae, or, like we've had like Willie Nelson, and
I love it.
And sort of like feel good. And then also the city people, because like to me it was always like, Southampton still feels like you haven't left the city because people are dressed up and you go to like St. Ambrose and all these cool restaurants, but you bump into all these people that sort of just saw on Thursday. And I wanted to it was okay if you showed up on your sarongs and flip-flops. It was almost like didn't feel organic if you showed up in high heels because, and I remember I've since removed the sign, but like our first year, I had a sign that had like an X to high heels.
That's so
Just because
funny.
I'm like, this is like the place that, a hedge fund manager should be able to come in, the fisherman, and just all worlds can sort of collide
And relax and be yourself.
And just like, drink a beer, listen to great music, talk to people, meet people. So that was super important to us. And that's how the music came in.
What was probably when you think back on those first couple of weeks, what were the things that you learned that you were surprised by?
I mean, couple of things. One, we had never done a project that big, right? And our expectations were because of Montauk, and I think because of all the struggles of like how we even acquired the property, we thought it would take a little time. So, we were going to all the hotels, dropping out postcards, and like came Memorial Day weekend, and it was way more than we probably could handle or expected. And I think partially is because there's always been tons of great restaurants in Montauk, and that community has just always been amazing. But I think that it was something different, and people were curious. In fact, I think, like we've looked back and said, like, I wish we had more time to sort of build, because the craziness brought also, I think, the community was almost in shock. They're like, what happened here? Right? And so like looking back, it's almost like we, it was too busy, too fast, and too soon. And so, in every project, you always learn something. And I think, it's not that we just irresponsibly made this place a success from day one. And, and people wanted to park, and there's not enough parking. So like, I think we've learned a lot about, the community part sort of.
Right. Embracing the community. And I know you've had to, do that over the years as well. And things have cropped up. And I think that's a really, really important point, that it's not just about building a business, but it's also about who else is around there. Right.
Yeah,
and I think it's certainly, and how much I think entrepreneurs don't realize a lot of that. I mean, we've, as you know, I'm in the Bay Area. I live in Marin County, but our business is in San Francisco. And we've had to deal with San Francisco on many things around our business over the years. And so whatever the local governments, actually, you have to pay attention.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And it's not that you don't want to, just sometimes you're just so in your own business and trying to do the right thing and service your customer. But I totally get like sometimes the community, and then
and sometimes like that fame that you didn't even ask or wanted, can harm your sort of relationship. Right. So it's like, along the way, we've fixed and now have a really great relationship with the community. But, it at first, I think the popularity hurt us more than sort of helped us, in that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think but that's a super good lesson for people who are listening too. And then as you continued to grow and evolve and update and you have inside the shop, every time I've gone out to the Hamptons, I've also been really excited to go into your store because you have such a good eye for bathing suits and all the stuff that is, people are like, wait, what are you doing? You're going out there? And I said, no, I'm going to shop at the Surf Lodge. It's always so great. So then you went and built this amazing pop-up in Aspen. How did that come about?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've always, since the beginning, the sort of image or the dream or, the long goal was to build the surf lodge, the sunset lodge, the snow lodge, right? And I've done like several pop-ups in Park City, and we looked at tons of other spaces throughout the years because it was, that's something that we want to do. And couldn't find, like, I've always pictured that our snow lodge place would be the surf lodge with snow, like, so the same deck with people listening to music, but instead of like the sun, it would, it would just be like, and nothing felt like, all the spaces were either part of like really big complexes that were too, I just didn't feel organic. And a friend had told me about the space in Aspen, and I started talking to the landlord maybe 8 months prior to us actually acquiring. And he said to me, he goes, listen, they're from New York. So he said, your project sounds amazing, but I'm talking to a really big operator. And I think I'm going to make a deal happen, and every 3 weeks I would say, hi, Jonathan, just checking in.
Good, right? Squeaky wheel.
Just checking in, and like to the point that at one point he was like, I think it's like at the last leg, it's happening. And I said, okay, great, but just, keep me in mind if things don't, work out. And I kid you not, I think it was maybe end of October. Yeah, it was probably like around my birthday, end of October. He called me. He says, you know what, Jayma? The space is yours. And I said, what? It's impossible. I'm like, we don't even have, I would, if I did this project, I would want to redo it. And, we don't really have enough time. And he's like, no, you do, it's a turnkey. Like you can just walk in. And I said, look, I don't know that we can do it that fast. But I'll take a journey to Aspen because I've seen the space 8 months ago. I want to just refresh. And so I got there beginning of November, and I'm like, it needs a lot of work, but I think the bones are here. And if we can come up with a deal that it's very fast, because sometimes the deal itself takes 2 months.
Forever. Yeah.
And so, long story short, we made it work, and we opened and made very little, changes, like painting the furniture that was there, and had Snow Lodge last year, which was amazing. And obviously it got cut short in March because of COVID, but it was another challenging, I don't know, with this timelines,
It's crazy. And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs out there who have an idea, right? And that just don't really know where to begin, though. I mean, there's a few lessons I think that you plopped into there, but
yeah, I mean, I think you sort of have to, first of all, understand your industry. It's like, it's not that you can't take risks, but like understand what it is that you're good at, and then go to market for it, raise the money, do the hard work. I mean, there's no, at least for me, there's no sort of easy way to the top, right? It's like hard work, determination, motivation, and knowledge, right? I think.
But you've learned also in all of these businesses, all different aspects of the business, right? I mean, I think what you love to do is really being on the front end, right? You're there at most right? But the other thing that I always share with people is that I've done pretty much every job inside of Hint. I now have an amazing CFO and, somebody who runs our direct-to-consumer business, but I actually know how to code a little bit. I can actually run our bottle at the factory, and, I could do it. There's people that are way better than me, but I've actually taken the time to go learn it, because that's how you are able, when things get hard and, you know, that you're able to know kind of what's going on with the business. And I know you've done that.
Communicate with your teammates, your staff, your coworkers, because you've done it, I've been a cocktail waitress. I've been a bartender. The one thing that I need to learn is DJ, because a lot of times
I bet you would be a great DJ.
Bite my tongue with the DJs. It's like, change the music, change it now. And I'm like, I got to be nice so it don't kill his vibe, but I want to kill him.
Oh, that's so funny.
I think it's understanding, I remember a couple of years ago at Surf Lodge, it was for Yext, and we were closed on a Tuesday, and I said, I don't want to lose this dinner because it's like, a good one, and it's, friends, and I said, I know my chef needs a day off. I'll do it. I'll cook. I'm going to get creative. And so it's always like, I think, understand all the different positions that, if your bartender doesn't show up, you can jump behind the bar, or, you can speak their language and they can respect you because, you've done it.
And be helpful too,
and be helpful,
right?
And also jump behind the bar when it needs it.
Yeah.
Period.
Common and super common sense, but I think so often it so bothers me when I hear entrepreneurs saying, oh, that's someone else's job.
Yeah, totally.
And it just is. And I think the ability to jump in, you don't do it every single day, but when you have to, you know how to do it, and you know how to find the problems, you know how to help when you need to help. And I think that's what I really admired about you. So then we jump into the most wonderful year that we've all had, 2020. And so you're rolling into the summer of 2020, and what do you do?
So it was tough, right? Because we had just sort of left Aspen 2 months earlier than we expected. And we're like, with hospitality, and especially I feel like the Surf Lodge or Snow Lodge is so much about people, right? And gatherings and this community. And it was super sort of, what is the responsible thing that we can do, right? Mm-hmm. Here where we don't know, we knew we couldn't operate at the level that historically we had. And so I met with my partners and we sort of said, okay, can we do this? Can we do this safely? Can we protect our coworkers and ourselves, and me included? And we just couldn't figure it out how to do that on the food and beverage part. We knew that we could do it on the rooms and sort of shift away from 2 days or 3 days, because our motto is pretty much, either you're there for the weekday and it's a more of a wellness sort of vibe, or you're there for the weekend. You spend very little time in your room and it's all about the food and beverage, but you never really stay at the Surf Lodge for a week or 2 or a month historically. And so we thought, why don't we try to shift the rooms to a 30-day live with us and hang out with us for 30 days and not open the food and beverage, because it's just a territory that we don't really know how to do it safely. Or we did it for like 2 days, grab and go, and the parking lot got filled super fast. And we were like, we just can't navigate through this. So it's a really tough decision, because we obviously have 144 employees who, not all of them live there. They've had rented homes. So it was not only, hey, we're not going to do this because, we don't feel like it's safe. But at the same time, we have this pressure of our entire staff that relies on us or work for the season and then go live somewhere else for 4 months. And so it was really tough. But I think, it was the responsible thing to do, because it was a hard territory. And to me, I feel like there's never It's just not my personality. There's no task hard enough. There's no hard territory. But sometimes a decision like this, it's a lot harder than actually say, let's open. And I'm glad that I have these amazing partners that supported me and that helped me through the hard times that, you know, of not opening the food and beverage, which is the core of our business, not just financially, but it's like what brings the whole thing together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that is something that, you know, people always say, don't look back. I think that 2020 for so many smart people will, you know, there's an imprint. This has been part of your journey. I don't think anybody will forget about 2020, but it's also about, you know, what you didn't do right, what you guessed was going to happen that didn't, or what you did right along the way. I mean, as I shared with our team, we are an essential product. And so while everybody was being told to shelter in place, I mean, we're by the government, we're labeled as water an essential product. And I didn't even know that term. Of course, I knew what the Webster's dictionary term was for, you know, essential, but that meant that our factories were going 24 hours a day in case water was needed. So there was huge responsibility to make sure that we were running, and we did a lot of things right prior to the pandemic, including automating a lot of our factories. But again, I did it for other reasons, not because I thought a pandemic was coming. Then I had to, you know, share with our team that while everybody's sheltering in place, you're actually working.
Yeah.
And so, and, you know, I had a few of our employees say, "Are you trying to kill me?" Yeah. And they were serious. I mean, they really, and so, you know, you really rely on, you know, your gut, and you're going to go try. And I think anybody is absolutely lying if they say that they, you know, did it all right, made no mistakes along the way, and you did your best, right, to make decisions along the way. And I think that is clearly, you know, what I've seen you guys do as well. And it's, but it's something that I think everybody will look back on 2020, and hopefully we're all going to look forward to 2021 and the vaccine. And we're going to, you know, we've got a new president coming in too, all very exciting. And so that's the best we can do. And so in terms of, you know, the business models and just more than anything, obviously you had to transform that. What would you say is kind of the biggest lesson that you learned from this whole time?
I would say challenges, I think. It helps us, keeps things fresh, right? And so, you know, I think it wasn't about just looking at like the negative, right? And saying like, wow, this is just, I don't know. I think it's like you almost have to like to change your mindset and make it more like, how can we better, right? How can we step up? Because now more than ever with hospitality, it's not just about the experience in the place. It's like, can we do, you know, the food to go? Can this work for us? Can this work for us? Can we do a ghost kitchen? Can we do several different cuisines? How can we keep the lights on so that we can be better next year? Not like, how can we make it all work today? It was more like, let's try to survive, do lots of, and help the community too, because I think, I remember we had just received all these hoodies from Aspen the day we closed. And I thought to myself, that, you know, they said the snow lodge, and it took forever to arrive. And you know, it was like towards the end of February. And I thought to myself, you know, like, we don't know how long that's going to be. So we took all the hoodies back to Montauk. And, you know, I remember May looking at like this hoodies that said the Snow Lodge. And I said, you know what? Let's call the Montauk Pantry. Let's ask them if everybody that buys a hoodie, if they're willing, like basically you buy a hoodie that says the Snow Lodge, not even Surf Lodge.
Yeah.
That $100 can go into the pantry, and so that we can help. I think there was like this sort of, look, we're okay, we're healthy. I'm lucky enough that I have partners that are able to help us get through this hard times. But there's a lot of people who are not lucky and they don't have food. And so how do we and I just saw my team, like everybody on the team is like, hey, Jayma, do you need help? So I think it was really interesting to see how, they were struggling too, right? They could use that $100. They didn't have a job. And it was really special to see my team come together and help others while they were struggling too. And I think I've learned a lot, like about, the things that are so important are, not what I thought was, and certainly has changed a lot my mindset, not just on a business level, but I think long term,
I love that. That's super true. And I think you went back to community too, and how really trying to figure out when maybe it's even when things are super tough. It's actually it's at a time when you can support maybe other people aren't in positions to support. And I think that that's really what you've shown, that you're able to be creative and think of these ideas, but also lend a hand, which you guys have clearly done.
Yeah.
So I love that. So last question. So one thing I probably should have mentioned if you all don't know this, but I think you're one of the few female founded hotels, right? And is that right? I was as CEO. There are very few women CEOs of hotels. Is that correct?
I mean, I think there is. There's one amazing one, Liz Lambert. I think she's a boss lady. But I mean, I personally never think of my industry as it's completely a male dominant one, because although the head honcho may be a man, there's like so much behind the scene. There's filled with this incredible, strong, smart, boss ladies, as we call them.
Yeah.
That makes, they're behind the scenes that really make the whole project a success. And then I feel like there's, at least for me, the males that I have worked with and sort of all my peers, they really help me grow and help me in my journey. And so I guess, it is a very male dominant one, but I know behind the scenes, there's this whole, other world that without them, they wouldn't survive.
Yeah. Well, I think it also, you're so modest, but I think it also points to the fact that you weren't going to allow that fact to stop you, right?
Yeah.
From doing what you ultimately wanted to do. And people have always said that to me. I mean, there aren't very many women who are leading beverage companies. And people always ask, was it tough to raise money as a woman? And I've never been a man, so I don't really know.
I don't know the difference.
And I don't know. I hate raising money. I hate, and I do, I own it. But I also say, look, at the end of the day, it's what I needed to do in order to really do my business. And that's what you've done. And and the resilience clearly shows. And anyway, I wish you all the best for 2021. And I've definitely been thinking good thoughts for you. And I think about you often. We had a little partnership, not this last summer, but the summer before that. And
we'll do it again this summer.
Yeah, exactly. And I love it. And if you, and next year, because you're not doing Aspen this year as well, right? So
we ended up we were going to do Aspen with Jean-Georges, ABCV. Finally, we had the time to redo the property and make and with all the restrictions, we decided it's just not viable to do the snow lodge as we wanted to be with Jean-Georges. And so I called a very brave friend of mine, Lyndon, and his wife, Natalie. See, there's always a woman.
Yes, exactly.
and I said to them, I said, listen, I can't do the snow lodge the way that we envision, right? Would you, but I do think that Dante, it's more of a cocktail, pre-bottle cocktail concept. They've navigated brilliant through the pandemic. And I said, I think you guys would kill it. Are you in? And he, to my luckiness, said yes. And so I've been supporting them, and it's called Dante at the Snow Lodge. So I'm still keeping my flag there, and very much involved with Dante, and like this also, I'm able to keep the space until next season, where we can do what really deserves to be done.
Well, another thing that I always say that I think you are just such a perfect example of is, what can we do?
Exactly.
Right?
What can we do?
And that is what great entrepreneurs in every single industry do. They don't allow things, a pandemic or anything, to stop them. They figure out what can they do.
Yeah. I call it, how do we keep the lights on?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. But I think you are just, it makes you stronger too, right?
Totally.
And I think you can't see Jayma's face, but she's smiling and she's still, here, and don't count her out, because she has got the resilience and the creativity to do more great things. So, thank you so much. And for everybody, thank you so much for listening, and give Jayma's her episode high marks, and come and tune in every Monday and Wednesday, where we talk with founders and CEOs and authors and great people who are just doing awesome things. So thanks, everyone.
Yay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Cara, for thinking of me.
Before we sign off, I want to talk to you about fear. People like to talk about fearless leaders, but achieving big goals isn't about fearlessness. Successful leaders recognize their fears and decide to deal with them head on in order to move forward. This is where my new book, Undaunted, comes in. This book is designed for anyone who wants to succeed in the face of fear, overcome doubts, and live a little undaunted. Order your copy today at undauntedthebook.com and learn how to look your doubts and doubters in the eye and achieve your dreams. For a limited time, you'll also receive a free case of hint water. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Send me a tweet at Cara Golden and let me know. And if you like what you heard, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Cara Golden. Thanks for listening.